Okay, dear student, in the last class, I have started about the some basic fundamental about drug pharmacology. What is important into the upcoming classes when I will discuss into the details of different drugs used in different disease in different system, how drug acting on all the system that I will discuss later in upcoming videos. To understand all this topic, you have to understand some important term that I already started to discuss from the last class. Last class we have studied about dose, what is drug dose, what is response, what is relationship between drug dose and response, and what is two types of relation are there. I told you drug plasma relation are there, drug response relation are there, then drug plasma concentration and response, they also have symmetric relationship. That relationship was directly proportional. That means drug dose is directly proportional to the drug plasma concentration, that is directly proportional to the response showed by the body with the action of drug. So in the last class I have finished up with the relationship between drug dose and response. There I have told you one equation, that was E is equal to E max into dose D divided by Kd into D, Kd plus D, where D was dose, E max was the maximum effect shown by the drug, Kd was dissociation constant, and E was the desired action, and E max, I told you, the maximum response that can be shown by a drug at a particular dose, that is D, at the dissociation constant of Kd. So it was the equation by which you can understand the relationship between drug and response relation. To understand the drug response relationship, except that equation, one more graph is there. By that graph that I have already drawn, by that graph also you can explain that same equation what is used to explain the relationship between drug response and relationship. So in that curve is called as drug response curve, that is generally used to determine or used to indicate how response and dose in base of log dose is related to each other, that we can understand from the DRC or drug response curve from this graph. So you have to remember DRC can be both, one can be sigmoid curve and second one can be normal curve. So in the diagram only I have shown you that S type of curve, that is sigmoid curve. When it is sigmoid curve, when you are drawing that graph against response and log dose, then that graph it will be sigmoid curve. And when you are drawing the relationship between only response and drug, then that will give normal curve. So two type of DRC is there. When you are drawing against response and only drug dose, then it will give you the normal curve, and when you are drawing that graph against response with log dose, then it will give you that sigmoid curve that I have already shown in that diagram. So by that you can easily understand the relationship between drug response and the relationship between drug log dose and response. So that diagram is important to remember. From that part only we can see two dots or two different point. One point is in 50%, or we can tell that is 25%, just suppose that is 25%. In 25%, what is the action or what is the response showed by the drug, that is called as, or the dose in which that is showing 25% or minimum effect, that is called as maximum effective concentration. And that highest peak where the drug is showing 100% action, there the adverse drug reaction should be minimum. above that value or dose, that ADR is started to increase, and that showed side effect, and effective or desired effect is showing less. So it is the point where the drug is showing maximum response and minimum adverse drug reaction. So that point is called as minimum toxic concentration. So two things you have to remember. One is maximum effective concentration, where that drug is started to showing its action is called as maximum effective concentration, and that point where the drug is showing maximum response and minimum adverse drug reaction, that is called as maximum or minimum, sorry, this is called as minimum toxic concentration, where that response is maximum and the adverse drug reaction is minimum. Above that point, above ADR or above MTC, means above the minimum toxic concentration, that drug response is started to decrease and that ADR or adverse drug reaction is started to increase. So we generally told patient to take the drug as a particular dose or particular concentration at which the drug is showing minimum adverse drug reaction and maximum number of response that for which the drug is intended in our body. So next thing, we have to study it after the DRC or drug response relationship. We have to know about two topic or two terms that you have to remember before going to into the main topic, that is potency and second one is efficacy. So what is potency and what is efficacy? The potency is the minimum or requirement of any drug dose that is required to show its desirable action, and minimum adverse drug reaction. So that is called as potency, and the efficacy is the amount of dose that is giving maximum response and minimum adverse drug reaction is called as drug efficacy. So what is the difference between potency and efficacy? Potency is the dose of the drug that is required for a drug minimum to show its intended or desired or acceptable drug reaction. To show that dose is called as potency. That potency means the dose that drug is required in minimum quantity to show its acceptable or show its desirable or show its therapeutic effect, and in efficacy it is the maximum dose at which the drug is having maximum response and minimum adverse drug reaction. So by that you can easily understand what is the difference between potency and efficacy. The next thing or next term that you have to remember, that is therapeutic index. And what is the significance of therapeutic index? So now we are going to study about therapeutic index, how it is going to express, what is the different term included in therapeutic index, and what is the significance for a therapeutic index of a particular drug. So that therapeutic index can be shown by a simple equation, that is I is equal to LD50 divided by ED50, where that LD means is lethal dose and where E means effective dose. So now we have to know what is lethal dose and what is effective dose. Just suppose you are taking 10 patients with a particular disease or 10 animals with particular disease. If after taking one drug 50% animal is dead, that 50% is called as lethal dose. So the dose where 50% animals are killed or died, that is called as lethal dose, and the dose where that 50% of animals are getting cured, that is called as effective dose. So what is lethal dose and what is effective dose? The dose where when you are affecting or giving the drug dose, that animals how much you are taking, 50% of them are killed or died, that means that is called a lethal dose. And if the 50% animal that are taking the drug are cured or getting healthier or getting overcome that disease or getting cured, that 50% dose is called as effective dose. So that is the definition of lethal dose and effective dose, and the ratio of lethal dose 50 and effective dose 50 is called as I, that is generally called therapeutic index. So by this I have already covered what is the important terms that is related to drug action, like dose, response, drug response relationship, how the drug response relationship is showed by a equation that is denoted by E. Then we have studied the DRC or drug response curve, which is the graph that is generally used to represent the relationship between rows and relation. Then we studied about two terms, that is drug potency and drug efficacy, and at last we have discussed about the therapeutic index. What is therapeutic index, what is LD or lethal dose, what is effective dose, etc. Next in upcoming classes I will discuss about the drug interaction, that means how when you are taking two or more drugs together into your body, how that one drug is going to affect that another drug and another drug is going to affect the one drug, that we are going to discuss into the upcoming classes. For today that is enough. Go and download the notes from the given link that is already pasted and already linked in that video. Go and check it out before going to the next classes, where we are going to discuss about the relationship or interaction between two drugs or three drugs when you are taking more than one drug at a one time in the upcoming classes. Thank you.